What's up, Mama Timers? Today we have JT Tsui. And let me tell you, JT Tsui is the man, a family man, life coach, and now author as of this post. We talk about what it was like for him to grow up Canadian born Chinese, the struggles he went through, and how he became a happy, healthy, successful husband and dad. This conversation was recorded back in February and is long overdue, but the timing is great because JT's book, You Are Greatness, has just been released. Congrats, JT. You can check out his book at youaregreatnessbook.com. Did you know that You Are Greatness book? I didn't know either. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you got something out of it, please share it with a friend. I'd really appreciate it. And now it's time to get into it hard. You know what time it is? It's mime time. Welcome to another episode of Mime Time. Here we have today JT Tsui. Is that how I pronounce it?
That is how you pronounce it.
I'm glad I got that right because, I grew up with people mispronouncing my name since I was a kid. I remember one time, my name is Mime Kim. So when I was a kid, one time I heard something over the intercom in elementary school, right? Would Mame King please come to principal's office? Mame King, please come to the principal's office. And I'm like, what kind of weird name is that? But then after a couple calls, I realized, oh, they're mispronouncing my name. No, life is unfair. Why did my mom give me such a weird name like Mime and it's spelled Maim, like Mame? And then I have to start this podcast and people think it's called Mame Time. Anyways, I'm just, I'm just blabbering on. But how are you today, JT?
Great. How are you, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm wearing this shirt that my lovely mother just put into the washing machine last night, so it's not completely dry. I'm staying a little moist and a little damp, but otherwise, this year is actually going really, really good. How was 2020 for you, JT?
2020 was definitely, I'll just say, an interesting year to say the least. My family, so my wife and I and our two kids started off the year traveling in Southeast Asia and checking out Thailand and Malaysia and Bali. So we started off there and then the world quickly hit pause and we came back here and fast forward 2020, it's at the very least it's brought the four of us closer together, so it's been really good for our family. It's definitely brought us closer and connected us.
Okay, let's cut to the chase, JT. What's been the worst part of all this Corona BS that has impacted the world for you?
I think the thing that challenges me at times is seeing a lot of people, and again, it's not to downplay, like I understand that there are a lot of people dealing with a lot of different things, whether it's health, whether it's financial, whether it's career, whether it's a relationship breakdown. I think for me, it's just seeing these people, seeing so many people struggling. And, my purpose in life has always been to be in service of others. So I feel like my heart just wants to help these people, right? And really just in any way I can. So I would say that that's probably been the biggest challenge for me, is just, wanting to help, but sometimes not really sure how I can help people.
I see. And what is it that you do, JT? Would you please tell us, our audience, about your cheeky little coaching endeavor?
Yeah, just to give everyone some context. So I was a high school teacher. So I was a phys ed and student success teacher for 15 years. I come from a coaching background of sports. 2019 decided to really go against the grain and follow my quote unquote heart, and as cliche as it sounds, and just wanted a new adventure in life. And in the process, I have really shifted my passion in towards my success and mindset coaching business, which really what I help people do is I help people get clear on what they want. And then I just show them how to achieve it with greater ease, with more joy, and just more calm, right? What I like to call the effortless way.
Yeah, and growing up, did you grow up with a lot of calm? What was it like growing up as a kid for you? Because for me, like I grew up in somewhat of a dysfunctional household, and it was not
Yeah.
calm for me.
Yeah. And I can appreciate, what you're saying, brother. For me, yes, what I'm sharing with people now and what I'm helping my clients do and how I'm living my life, most importantly, wasn't the way. I grew up in just say, a high energy house. I sort of picked up on some of those habits, right? So for many years of my life, I was very quick to temper, very reactive, and yelled a lot. And yeah, I grew up, whatever you want to call around a lot of in a very reactive environment, which sort of formed the majority of my life, which is, to be quite honest, why I love what I do now, because it's sort of helped show me a different way and it's helped me redefine what my life is. And, in the process, it's helping me create a different experience for my own kids, right? And my wife and our family.
Would you say you had a pretty typical upbringing? Where exactly did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So yeah, pretty typical. It definitely wasn't like now. If you take a look at Toronto, Asian people of Asian descent are by far the majority here. It wasn't so much when I was growing up. Very diverse, all kind of ethnic backgrounds, cultural beliefs, religious belief, which I loved because it got me so open and just having friends from different parts of the world. Yeah, so it really got me open there. I would say the challenge that I was saying this to my wife yesterday, was sort of put me in this middle growing up because here I was, Canadian born Chinese, and I didn't really speak Chinese, right? I didn't really have some of those stereotypical, I didn't enjoy school. I wasn't good in the math and sciences. I didn't play, whatever stereotypes, we've been led to
What
believe.
that was me as well. I was not good at math.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go on.
Oh, no, no, I love that. I love meeting people that had similar experience. The other part though was I didn't look like a lot of my friends, right? You know, I, I didn't travel to, I didn't play a ton of hockey growing up. I didn't travel to Florida at there. So it was really trying to fit in. I spent a lot of my early years really trying to fit in because I kind of felt like I was in that quote unquote messy middle. So that was sort of my upbringing.
I see. And I actually think I and so many other, you call it, Asian diaspora or
Yeah,
Asian North Americans, right? I
yeah,
think a lot of us can relate. I think if you think about any given nation or population, whether Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Laotian, Cambodian, and so on, within a society, there's a diversity of peoples of different backgrounds and cultural upbringings, even within one
mhm,
culture, within one society. And then to have a subset of this population move to Canada
mhm,
or America or
mhm,
Europe or somewhere in the West, even within our sub community, right? The diaspora, there's a diversity of people. There are LA Gilpos, right? Korean Americans who grew up in LA or New York. And my
mhm,
experience growing up is far different from theirs because they had Korean American upbringing. They might be second or third generation Asian immigrant. But I didn't have that, and I grew up mostly around white kids and some black kids and Hispanics, as a lot of Asians did.
mhm,
And I think with the power of the internet, us loners with these identity crises, we can
yeah,
finally join together and be nerdy and talk about how we were always
yeah,
in that middle ground, always trying to fit in, with different groups of people. I think this is an amazing time because we can actually talk about these things. We can talk about our feelings, man. We can
yeah.
talk about our feelings. And it's wonderful. And I think more and more as time goes on, I look at my past, right? I think about this all the time, like my identity and who I am. What's it mean to be Korean? What does it mean to be Asian? What does it mean to be American or Western? And I realize as time goes on, there's actually a lot of people like us. There's more than we
Mhm,
think. We think that at the time growing up, oh, like where do I fit in? Like I'm so alone. Who the hell can I talk to about my problems, right? Or my
yeah,
problems, like I don't know where I fit in, man. I don't know if
yeah.
like am I white? Like am I Korean? It's funny, man. I was actually born in Korea, but my family went to America when I was one. Growing up as a Korean American in say like North Carolina, I lived in Charlotte and Raleigh when I was a kid. I was the only Asian kid in most of my classes. And
Mhm,
people around me, they'd be like, "Are you Chinese or Japanese?" And for a while, there's probably a period of time in my childhood, before I was 10, before I was 7, maybe, where I was just like, sure, like I'm Asian. I don't know other Asian people aside from my family. So, like, I don't know, am I Chinese or Japanese, or am I just collectively Asian? I just kind of had this, you just kind of have this pan-Asian identity, maybe. But what
Mhm.
the fuck? I never grew up in Korea. Like, English is my first language. Why are people trying to put me in a box, man, asking me if I use chopsticks and if I do karate and like Jackie Chan, or they call me Jackie Chan.
Mhm.
So that really messed with my head. And I look at all that and this search for identity and this confusion. I was like, I had to go through these things to become the person that I was. And what it did for me is it made me more humble. It made me not maybe say stupid things to people I meet for the first time of different skin colors or whatever, because I know what it's like to have awkward questions or uncomfortable questions. Where are you from?
Yeah.
This and that. And it made me more humble. It made me be able to make friends wherever I went. And that's also partly because like my family moved around a lot since I was a kid. So this is
Yeah.
our time, man. Us, Asian diaspora loners always trying to fit in. Like we have our people now.
Yeah.
We have each other. We have each other, man. I have you, JT, and you have me.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about that now in retrospect? Did you go through a period of like loneliness, not knowing where you fit in? How do you feel about that now, looking back?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. For me, I found sport pretty early, and what I found was that because of just certain characteristics I had in terms of my body and certain natural talents and gifts, I actually did find sport. I did find some success in sport early growing up. And for me, that sort of became this way to connect with other people. The interesting part is that as I found sport, again, it allowed me to connect, to fit in. But like anything, everything has a good thing. Everything has a positive. Everything has a negative, right? Like every cell, right, of your body has that. It taught, right? Like sport taught me how to be ambitious, right? It taught me how to set big goals. It taught me how to really become very process driven, right? And to really, how to work towards something on a daily basis. And it got me open minded in terms of it made me really coachable. But the challenge with that being, sports really interesting because it teaches us a very linear approach, right? Like it has to be this way, right? Like you have a winner and you have a loser. So I feel like it's taught me a lot of great things, but it's also, like anything, you got to keep things in context, right? Because I'm a firm believer that in life, it's not a zero sum game, right? It doesn't have to be only have a winner and a loser. Yeah, sport taught me that. I think in the grand scheme of things, where it's sort of come back 360 is that what was one of the things, like someone asked me today, what did you love? Like I posed a question in my community, what did you love to do as a kid? And someone posed a question back to me, like, what did you love to do? And the interesting part is the thing I actually enjoyed the most as a kid, like the surface level answer would have been playing sport. But what did I really love to do? I've always been super curious. I've always loved asking people questions, finding out about them, learning more about them, finding out what makes them tick. And for me, I think that that was a way because I sort of didn't always feel very seen and heard as a kid, that I think that that was a way for me to really connect with people. And I guess the really interesting part is that sort of framed my entire career as a teacher and a coach, was really getting super curious about people. Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting process.
I think that's great. I sometimes regret that I didn't pick up a sport when I was a kid because, growing up with low self-esteem and being overfed as a lot of Asian parents,
Yeah,
as a lot of Asian kids growing up in the West or wherever there's a lot
yeah,
of food in abundance, right? My
yeah,
my parents fed me a lot, and so I kind of experienced this vicious cycle of gaining weight and then looking at the mirror as a kid and hating myself and thinking I was chubby, thinking I was fatter than I actually was,
mhm,
and being called fatso by kids, and then just like being like, yeah, I'm a fat person. Like that was just my way of like coping it when other kids tease me for being like chubby, right? They tease me for
mhm,
being Asian, for being chubby, and maybe wearing glasses. But then like I took like these mean words from these other kids, and then I accepted it about myself, you know. So like
Mm,
I'm unattractive, I'm not worthy, I'm fat and I'm overweight and I'm always going to be this way. So these limiting beliefs, these self-defeating beliefs, as you might imagine, were not very helpful in PE,
mhm,
right? In gym class growing up. And so I was a kid that was always picked last. But if I had just found like a sport or even karate or taekwondo when I was a kid, I feel like if I had gotten out of my head and more into my body, then
mhm,
I would have had more, well, hand-eye coordination. I would have built more physical confidence in my body and myself, knowing my body, knowing how far and how hard I can push myself. If I had some of these things, if I just got out of my head more as a kid, I think
mm.
I think kids especially, before they're corrupted by society and all that. I think kids more than anyone, they're just in the moment. They're just living in the moment, and that's a beautiful thing. And actually, I like to think that in my best moments, that's what I'm doing. I'm living in a moment, and I'm in my body, and I'm just very present. But growing up as a kid, I was stuck in this nightmarish hellhole, this pattern cycle of like loathing myself, which
Yeah.
fed my low self-esteem, which in turn, in reality, just made me less effective in anything that I was supposed to do, whether it was class or homework or sports.
Yeah.
So I envy people like you because it seems to me like you found some sort of identity. Would you say you found some identity in doing sports? You said you weren't into hockey. Was it hockey that you did?
Yeah, no. So my main sport, right? The where I found sport early was through competitive soccer. Yeah, and then as I grew up in high school and college, right, then I found right football. So depending on where you're listening, American football, and that sort of just led well. I think I was pretty aggressive when I was younger. I felt like I always had a lot to prove. So I kind of felt like it was, I sort of likened it to, it's like it's like controlled aggression. It's controlled violence, right? So I think it became an outlet for me to really almost process some of the things that I was feeling, right? I firmly believe that if I didn't have football, right? Because I was going down not a great path when I was a teenager. Again, you have that where you're angry. Let's just say you're not really sure who you are. That can lead you down some interesting roads. And I'm grateful that I found football and that football found me, whichever way you want to look, because I think it just kept me from, venturing down some other roads that I was going down.
Well, what is it that you had to prove, JT, growing up, playing sports? What was it as, you were kicking that ball? What is that thing that you had to prove to yourself or to the coach or to others?
Uh, one thing you brought up is I can only imagine what my parents had to go through to come right to this country, right? My dad and I aren't close. Like there's no relationship there. I mean, he came here at 18 years old with a couple $1,000 from his parents, came to the country, didn't know anyone, and here's a plane ticket there, and he had to make a go of it here. And then my mom went to school in the UK and then came over here after. So I think for them, they came to a country, right, where they didn't know anyone and they had to sort of make a life here. And I think with that, obviously, like many of us that are first generation here, our parents worked a lot. I think for me, in retrospect, I think a lot of it was just seeking the approval and attention of others, just because I grew up around my grandparents a lot. Like my grandparents came to the country too, and they lived with us. And again, it's your grandparents, it's different. So I think for me, it was really seeking the approval of adults and really looking for kind of that because I found that I spent a lot of time by myself growing up, right? So probably to a degree, a bit of approval, mostly approval from adults.
Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a brother. He's 9 years younger than me. So again, I left for college, university at 18. So I mean, he was 9 years old. So it's only been in the last few years. He's also an educator now. So I feel like in the last few years, I've definitely made a concerted effort to really connect with him, and I actually feel like we're closer now. Yeah, we were not close at all when I left for school.
Okay, I see. And is he a lot like you? Do you see him maybe going through a lot of similar like issues or struggles that you faced when you were his age? Do you find yourself like kind of mentoring or guiding him a bit?
Yeah, I think everyone has their own, journey, right? I would say he's brilliant. Like he is academically, he went to private school. He's very academically inclined, like bright, 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 bright.
Oh,
Um,
so you're the sporty older bro, but he's the nerd.
you know what? You know what? He's brilliant. And again, he's a teacher and he has this way of going. So I think the interesting thing is, I think we sort of are polar opposites in there. Now he's found his way through other sports. So I mean, he's a competitive. He comes from a competitive powerlifting background, like national
Okay,
level. So
not a typical nerd.
yeah, very strong in powerlifting. So you know what? We each have our own thing, but what I'm most proud about is our brotherly love has come out a little bit more the last few years. So that at the end of the day, right? Like that's we had each other, right?
And so, growing up with your family, what kind of values do you think they instilled in you that you live out today?
Yeah, if I was looking at the quality, the one thing that I will definitely say is my mom and her two sisters are very academically focused, right? Like my mom has her MBA. Her sister is, a CA. Her other sister is a doctor of psychiatry. So I think what they really instilled in me was this belief in the importance of education, which without that push, like it wasn't even I remember saying to my mom when I was in high school, like I didn't see myself going to school, right? Like I was just maybe like follow my dad's footsteps, maybe I don't know, go into sales or go into the his business, right? Which he was selling cars, and she was like, nope, not even up for discussion. You're going to school, and I think just having that sort of expectation there academically pushed me to stretch in this transition, switching careers, midstream, like at 40, it's been good because, it's taught me that how to be successful no matter what your field is. So I really love that. The other thing that really strikes out to me is the importance of travel and really being open to new cultures, to new foods, and really just again, not judging a book by its cover. So I would definitely say that there's this mindset of, have high expectations more than whatever you do. And then two, just that ability to be open minded and see the world. And yeah, so I would say those are probably two of the core values that have really stuck with me growing up.
That's awesome. Before I forget, I was looking at your group the other day, Thinking into Greatness. Can you tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that group?
Yeah, no, it's thank you for checking that out. And again, I always appreciate, the
Please chill
support.
yourself as hard as you'd like.
So thinking into greatness, it started. So just to give people context, in 2016, Mother's Day, I went into the hospital. They thought I was having a suspected appendicitis. So, again, I always say to people, what a great husband I am, right? Like your wife's driving you to the emergency room on Mother's Day. But, was laying in that bed in like the worst pain I've ever felt, where I really started to ask myself some different questions. I started saying, like, am I living my best life, right? As cliche as it sounds. So I found personal growth and self development. So, anyways, I noticed that around 2017, I was really creating a different sort of, I was just wanting to be around people. I felt like the questions I was asking, I didn't really feel like I was connected to my peers and my friends. So anyway, started a group. So in the process where we are now is thinking to greatness is all about me sharing these ideas and the hope is that every day I hop on a live, which I call Chalk Talk, which is paying homage to my background as a coach, right? As a football coach, as a track coach, as a hockey coach, right? And really just presenting people with one idea a day. And it's a short live, less 5, 6 minutes at the most. And I just want to present people a new idea, right? And the idea is probably very counterintuitive to what we've been led to believe. And through that idea, what I want people to do is just to prompt them to think. right? Differently. And in that process, when they start to think differently, your world starts to shift, right? Your perception starts to shift. And through that, it's just around that. And if people can start thinking differently, then they can start asking themselves some different questions. And through that process, I've learned from myself, I see with my clients that you just start to understand better who you are, what you want out of life. And when that happens, that's where life gets really freaking fun.
So you started the group shortly after you survived your suspected appendicitis in
Yep.
2016.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
started, I think, February 19th, 2017.
Wow. So what's been the most rewarding part of leading the group? Any anecdotes?
I think for me, it started off as a Facebook group, right? Like when I first started, it was like, okay, I'm going to post something. And I think for me, I think the first post, it was more of a health and wellness focus. And really, the most rewarding part has been how it's become my life's purpose, right? Like people often ask me, like, how do you leave? Like I left one of the safest, most comfortable careers ever, right? Like a teaching job here in Canada. I mean, you are literally like people that have said to me, like when people found out I was leaving teaching, like, how can you leave $100,000 a year job, defined benefit pension? Like you're doing what? Like people thought I was going freaking crazy. But why I did it,
I was just
you know,
gonna
I
say
went,
that it sounds to me that you blew it, man. Your life is
yeah.
over. You're in denial. But go on.
Yeah. You know what? For me, it's become my life purpose. Like it's just, I knew for me that teaching and coaching, although safe and familiar and really comfortable, and I was good at it. I wasn't good at it. I was great at it. I realized that there was more to life than who I was as a football coach, as a classroom teacher. And in that process, I've learned so much about me when I found my mentor that I just feel this responsibility to share with people. And that's been the most rewarding part, getting messages from people that, it might be someone I went to high school with. Like, thank you for sharing this. It did this. I got a message, just a message went to a former student who said something that I posted in there made that this person reconnect with their estranged father, which they hadn't talked to in 3 years. I look at what my clients are doing in their lives and how they're showing up in their personal and professional lives. And it's just every day I don't know. I just think what a beautiful gift this is.
Do you ever have the what do you call it? Do you ever have the thoughts of self-doubt? Oh, was this the right move? Since you left your job, did those thoughts ever come up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Definitely when I first left, I would find myself, sort of in my awareness being like, what are you doing? Like, go back to your job. And there were times where, football was a big passion for me. And the year I left, my former team, which I was a head coach of, actually ended up going to one of the strongest teams in the country and really kind of going there. So, I mean, for me, it was kind of, it was an interesting growth process. And I did find myself at times going, what the did you just do? Like go back, go get your job. I would find myself looking for other teaching jobs and I would catch myself and going, what are you doing? Right. And to be quite honest, that's why I resigned. Like for me, I'm all in. Like that is one of the things I'm all in. So I resigned because I knew that if I had that chance to go back, I just knew it would be easier for me to kind of slink back. And when I say slink back, that's just for me. Does it come up from time to time now? It comes up in the odd time, right? But I would say it's more just that old conditioning that wants us all, that we all have that one, right? Where it says, do what's safe, do what's comfortable, do what's familiar. But I realize that it's not what I want. It's just based on what other people think. So I can sort of reframe it and realize it's not me. It's not what I want anymore. So yeah, it comes up, but I know why it's coming up now. So
Okay, so would you say that you have like a good formula or a good self-talk system to deal with self-doubt? Because this is something that I'm still working on, and I think I've
yeah,
gotten a lot better of it over the years. Like, when a thought comes up, right? That's not
Yeah.
helpful, or it's like it's doubting your purpose, or just I should have gone back to that job, or why did I
Yeah.
do that? Like what do you do? You take a deep breath, you
Yeah.
you drink some tea, you think about it, or like you shove that out of the way so with some positivity, or you just
Yeah.
you just marinated it and then acknowledge and let it go. How do you do it?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I'll share something with your audience, with you and your audience that, you know, I didn't know until I found this work was, we have two parts. If you really break things down, we have two parts of our mind, right? Like, yes, we have many parts, but let's just say for simplicity's sake, you have that conscious part of the mind, which is like that part of the mind we use in school a lot, right? It's where you read all the books, you just gather information, right? And that is operating less than 4% of the time. You have this other part of your mind, your subconscious. That part of your mind runs the show. It's like going 96, 98% time. It's where your habits, right, are formed. So for me, what I've learned in this process is that I've needed to change my beliefs, right? And like you were mentioning earlier, this and instilling this belief that, yeah, you know what? Things aren't, circumstances, conditions, results will come up from time to time. And when they aren't what I want, the doubt, the worry, the insecurities are going to come out, right? Like it's just, that's those limiting beliefs. But I have these rituals every day where I'm affirming those beliefs, right? That allow me to continue along my growth journey, right? So yeah, for me, a big part of my day is affirmations, right? Is writing them out every day, listening to them. Like I have a recorder that I listen to it throughout the day. I read it. And I find that affirmations have been a game changer for me in my life. That as I've committed and made them a habit of my life.
That's great. Can I hear a couple of those affirmations? What are some of your favorite affirmations, man?
Yeah. So I always go back to the affirmation should be whatever your goals are, right? So I know for me personally, one thing that I've really worked on a lot is my mindset, my money mindset. The reason being, and I'm sure that a lot of, especially listeners coming from Asian backgrounds, start to realize that there's a lot of fear around money. I don't know about you, but I felt like I grew up around a lot of fear around money, like scarcity, and there. So for me, I do spend a lot of time affirming things around money, right, in terms of my money goal, because let's just say this: money's energy to me, right? It's just simply a tool that, it's like if I give you $1,000, you're right, your energy, you're gonna get happy. So for me, it's really around those ideas. So like I'm so happy and grateful now that money, right, that money flows to me in increasing quantities through multiple streams of income. Yeah, so things like that. So I have right now. I'm really in this season where I'm really focused on affirming and strengthening my relationship around money.
I see. And do you have affirmations for like health, or, like psychological well-being, or having
Yeah.
six-pack abs, or being a better father?
Yeah, so the health one to me, that the health is something that I feel coming from a sport background has been is something that I think I've just had enough repetition. Like I started playing sports when I was 4. So I feel like the health one is a little bit easier there. In terms of the relationship with my kids, I would say that is the one area of my life that has had the biggest transformation since leaving teaching, because I can invest more time and energy into my kids. So yeah, so I am constantly like, I am so happy and grateful now that I'm a calm and confident leader in all areas of my life, right? Especially with my kids. So I do affirm a lot of things around that. And as I said, if pick up on it, that I affirm the areas of my life that don't come easy, because we all have those areas that probably are a little bit easier for each of us, right? For me, the health part, I come from a kid background. I'm an athlete. I get that part. But for me, like right now, it's a season of really affirming around my relationship with money and my relationship in terms of how I interact with my kids.
And how old are they now?
Yeah, my son just turned 10, and my daughter, Kiana, is 7.5.
How do you think they look at you as a dad? Do you think you're doing a good job?
So, the interesting part was, and just to give people some context of where I was in Southeast Asia, it got to the point, right, where we were sitting in Malaysia and we had a pretty honest conversation with my son, who was 9 at the time, and said, if you're not happy, we will fly you home. And the interesting part, and I shared this on a Chalk Talk recently, was my limiting beliefs as who I was as a father were really coming out, right? Like for years, I had the best intentions. Like I would say to my wife, I want to be a better dad. I want to be better. And for whatever reason, I just never put the habits into place. Like I would have like a good day here and there. And finally, my wife said something a couple years ago where she said, how come you are so good? Like you have worked with tens of thousands, you have coached hundreds of, if not thousands of males, but you struggle so much with your own son. And that literally hit me like a 2x4 got between the eyes. And why I share that with you is the best part of this journey here. Now that my kids haven't been in traditional school since January of last year. So they've been with us full time 24/7 since January. Seeing my son be truly comfortable in his own skin, to see him calm and confident because I am choosing and taking responsibility and not allowing my upbringing, right? Like not allowing, I essentially, for the majority of my son's life, was doing the exact same bullshit that my dad did with me that I fucking hated, part of my language. And I was doing it.
Let
And
it out,
finally,
man. Like we need to hear it. Yeah. We need
and
to hear it.
making that decision. Do I do it perfect? No. Does that side come out the odd time? Absolutely. Like I'm a human, right? Like, but knowing that doesn't define me, that seeing him smile and seeing him want to hug me and doing all that, and us even sitting on the couch Saturday, him sitting on my lap still at 10 years old and doing that, like to me, that's like the greatest gift because I feel like I'm changing the trajectory of our family, like breaking this generational cycle of unhealthy father son relationships. Honestly, like that is, if it all ended today, like, I, I would be totally cool with it because it's changed our family.
That's amazing, man. This the speaking of like intergenerational father-son pain, I think this affects so much of, this affects all Asians and especially in our own way, Asian Americans. This stuff is, I would say, exacerbated with intergenerational, father-son relationships, right? There's the age gap, but when you have this cultural gap and you're growing up as like first or second generation people who grow up in a different place, it's like even more chaotic. It can be more dysfunctional. It can be more confusing. I find that this is such a great opportunity since our parents and their parents' generations went through the hard shit. They went through the rough times, and finally, the world and all these societies, in general, like have developed economically, and we finally have some room to breathe because they went through the hard times without food, and without abundance. Now we are in this time of abundance because of the sacrifices that they made. I like to think that way. And so, just that you and I can have this conversation, over the internet, right? We don't have to worry about food, and and we have this time to talk our feelings out, man. Like we're immensely blessed, and I
Yeah.
find that's why I wanted to start my podcast and start the show, is just to like come to acceptance with our identities, work out these things together so that we can, heal, and we can stop the cycle, bro. We can stop the cycle.
Yeah.
In Korean, we call this Han, the Hancha, the Chinese traditional character behind Han. The same character is also in, of course, China and in Japan, but in Korea it carries this like complex meaning. It's just like the feeling. It's like a collective psychological collective trauma from conquests and oppression and wars and pillaging and rape that Korea went through from from China, from your ancestors, man. uh, from Japan, from outside powers, crushing Korea, oppressing Korea. When Korea didn't have a lot of power, right, to defend itself from these greater outside forces, and also like the collective like interest, societal, pressures and trauma. People within Korean society being abusive to each other. Mothers and fathers being abusive to their children, wives and husbands being abusive to each other, the higher aristocratic classes, looking down and beating on the lower classes and the lower class peasantry, just being dysfunctional, right? They didn't have modern psychology, we're just worried about food, they didn't care about being, ladies and gentlemen. They didn't talk their feelings out. If they had a problem, then they just did terrible things to each other. So this Han, it's this feeling of great sadness and pain and anger, right? And you can't, because it comes from a force, like either like a superior, your boss, or your parents. When you're powerless and you're helpless, that feeling of victimhood, that feeling of like, you're helpless. That pain, is stored deep inside your psyche. And then when you're stressed or when you are in a position of power over others, then you will take it out on them. I think, especially in my family, I feel like I'm particularly blessed to have this opportunity where we can talk these things out so we can stop the cycle.
Mhm.
So it's really amazing to hear your story, man, and to hear that you want to be, a better father, and that you want to stop this cycle. Oh yeah, do you want to say something?
Yeah, and it's taken me a lot of years, and again, still something I'm working with. Right? Is listen, like so when we first moved back to Toronto, it was interesting because it was the first time in years where my dad and I actually sat down. Right? Like we would sit down. And he's not very expressive, like stereotypical, like not very expressive, and saying that. And it was in that moment where, and he's got a number of health issues, right? Later stages of dementia. And, he's physically he's there, mentally, emotionally, he's not there. And he said to me, you know what? You're a much better father than I am. He's
Oh my
like, I
God.
just, and it was interesting because he said that to me. And I remember just hearing that. And I realized that at the time, it didn't make me feel any better. And I thought, it's interesting that that's all like, I always thought that I just wanted him to say, you know what, I was a piece of shit. But I realized in the process that, you know what, he's done the best he could with his current level of awareness. And does it mean that things don't trigger me at some point? No. But really coming from that place where he did the best he could with the information he had, where his awareness is, that has allowed me to forgive him, and not to forgive him to say what he said or what he did was there, but it was just this idea that I need forgiving him is giving permission for me to not let him still control me. That it's about me making a choice that I can learn from that, and I can do better for my son so that he can be better for his son, and so on. So I just wanted to say, like, it's been a great gift having this awareness, and I just choose to use it to better the future and not live in the past.
That's fucking awesome, bro. What kind of challenges do you see for your kids growing up, being half Asian? I mean, do you think they have it better off than you do? What are you most worried about for them? What kind of people do you want them to be?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I was actually having this conversation with my massage therapist, who again is, very growth minded, like you and I. And it's been interesting that into this transition, as we have started to, as my wife and I have really made a priority to not just follow social norms, like don't just stay in a career that just because that's what people do, right? And do that. But I've noticed that one of the beautiful things that happened is our kids are expressing more of who they are. So the challenge with that though is that they sometimes don't fit the mold. So I noticed it a little bit more with my son. Like he's creative. He has a big heart. He's curious. And I feel like for him, it'll be interesting because, in our former community, everyone played hockey. He doesn't, right? He doesn't play video games. He loves to read. He loves to draw. He makes his own cartoons. So I think what it's really taught me, and the challenge is just reminding my kids, especially my son, to just embrace who you are. Like, we'll love you. And that's where I just do things where, again, we make sure that we tell them we love them and we're proud of them, and just continue to foster and really nurture those gifts. So I would say that that's been a big emphasis for us in this transition.
Where do you see your business and your coaching and your
Mm.
Facebook group going forward? What's your vision, bro?
Well, the vision again comes back to this, right? Is for me, it's about being of service, right? And I know how I can be of service is really helping people get clear on what they want. The truth is, most people don't know what they want, right? They think they know what they want, right? So it's helping people get clarity, giving them, creating and holding that space for them, and really giving them permission to dream big, and just showing them how that the effortless way, right? Like I said, the antithesis of the hustle and grind. Like to me, if hustle and grind is what you want, I'm not your coach. I'm not your mentor. So for me, it's about being of service. So I think for me right now, it's really about understanding that how I can best serve others is continuing to get people to think highly of themselves, whether it's my clients, whether it's people in my community, because as the tide, right, whatever that analogy is, as the tide in the harbor rises, all boats rise, right? So that for me is the big emphasis, is really how to get everyone to see how truly amazing they are, how great they are, how abundant and prosperous, and that's their birthright. And that's the vision of it, and to do that until the day I physically leave this earth. That's my vision for it, brother.
That's awesome, man. I think there's maybe one or two questions I'd like to ask as a man, as a father, and looking back at your upbringing. Like, how do you feel now about Asian identity? Like, do you find yourself like identifying as Chinese Canadian?
Mm-hmm.
Do you identify at one? Did you identify at different points in your life, one more than the other?
Yeah.
Is this something that like you just don't really care about, or you just kind of put off to the side? And how do I say this? How does that affect your parenting, right? Do you ever teach your kids,
Yeah.
like you're half Chinese, half Canadian, or whatever, but you're my son, and don't
Yeah.
let other kids bother you. I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah. And that's a great question. Over the last couple of years, definitely, I feel like I have got reconnected to some of the things that I would say maybe that I thought weren't important to me because I was working so hard to fit in. Definitely one thing that I've reconnected to, and I'm still in the process of figuring out, is my idea of like, definitely faith has definitely played a bigger role in my life in terms of that, and not just in a religious context, but really this idea of really believing in something greater, right? Whatever that is, right? Whether it's God, universe, source, infinite intelligence. So that's definitely been something that has framed a lot of my life and is a big part of my work. And for the cultural stuff, I would say what I love is that my kids, like, they love parts of their Asian culture. And I think for me, it's really about really just connecting them to all parts of who they are, right? Yeah, they are part Asian, right? They are part Canadian. So I think it's really just celebrating all parts of who they are and just allowing them to see the parts. Like my kid's favorite food is dim sum. It's sushi. So it's funny that we really haven't made an emphasis on it, but there's something about it that really connects them.
That's awesome. And one last question. If you could go back to maybe your 10, 15, 20-year-old self, and they're going through their issues, they're trying to prove themselves, they're trying to figure out life. Like, what would you tell them being where you are now? Like, what would you tell them to, live a better life, to think more into greatness, if they could
Yeah,
think into greatness earlier, sooner, more efficiently, and help other people, be of even more service to other people, what would you
yeah.
tell them?
I think a couple things. Would it be okay if I share two that sort of popped up?
Sure, yeah.
I think the first thing is your past doesn't define your future. So the choices that you make, whatever is in the past is in the past. It is what it is, right? It's fact, like whatever. But the choice that you make now in this moment will determine where it goes from here. And everything in life is a choice. One thing I say is average is a choice, right? Yeah, you can do an average. Choose greatness, make greatness, choose greatness, make greatness the standard in your life. And what I would say to them is just, yeah, I think I kind of encompass that to one, like choose, like make greatness the choice, and you can never go wrong.
That's fucking beautiful, man. I think that's all the time we have for today. If people want to reach out to you, JT, or follow what you're doing, or even maybe consult for a cheeky coaching call, how can
Yeah.
they contact you?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of Facebook is where I'm definitely providing the most value. It's where I'm on every day. Again, I'm hosting a chalk talk every day and sharing those ideas. So again, the community is, you can find me on Facebook, JT Tsui. It's Thinking to Greatness. And I'm on Instagram, right, as underscore JT underscore Tsui. So you can sort of find me everything there. And that's probably the best way to connect with me is on Facebook.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, JT, for sharing your story and your journey, man. This is really cool. And I also appreciate you reaching out to me because, it's been a while since I published a cheeky episode. So, just having people like you out there, even though we never met in person, you were always like, I loved your energy from the beginning because I know, you found my podcast and then you just sent like that message to me. It was really encouraging. And I was just like, this guy's fucking cool. Like, just to reach out to someone like me that he's never met, but resonated with my message. So I want to let you know, like, I really appreciate that. And, we can finally have this episode together. And so,
Yep.
like, I really appreciate what you're doing for me just for this opportunity for us to, talk and record this so I can upload this. It means a lot. It's things like this, conversations like this that I think will help us, support each other, help everyone grow and be the tide that lifts all boats.
Love it, brother.
Thanks so much, JT. And thank you, Mime Timers, and also JT's Thinking into Greatness audience. If you listen to this, have a great day and talk to you soon. Peace.